Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Transform Istanbul chapter event. Today is a very special session with Dan because we are doing the first live session. We are usually doing in-person sessions in Istanbul chapter, but when we were talking with Dan, which we will have the follow-up sessions starting from next week, we said, why don't we do one just before the Transform event? So, hi, Dan, how are you?
I am good. How are you doing? I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this event.
Me
Of
too.
course, I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
next
we've been
week.
chatting about this for weeks, and
I
I was like,
know,
really,
I know, and we got so many. I don't see yet the how many people are turning out, but I loved the energy around the topic that we're talking about. It's important. It's human, right? It's a very human topic, and I'm just delighted to be doing this with you and keeping it going, keeping this conversation going. And isn't it a one and done conversation? This is an ongoing dialogue that's necessary.
yeah, and I'm so happy that I have you today to have this conversation because we having these ad hoc conversations, but I really want to touch people and spread the word about this. And so that takes me to the question, why are we talking so much about engagement, so much about happiness in the workplace lately? I mean, this is so straightforward and this is like a no-brainer. Why would we be talking about it now? Because this should have been like in our lives for so long. I mean, like being happy at work, being engaged at work. This is like, why are we talking so much about it right now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, there's some obvious realities um, in the US and globally. There's a lot of distraction. Here, if I had to answer that very succinctly, it's always been important, and we've always been talking about it. Obviously, from employee satisfaction to employee engagement to continuous listening to employee happiness to employee experience. We just label it a little bit differently, but ultimately, it's about giving employees a safe place to show up, connect, thrive, and if they're happier at work, they're happier in their lives. And right now, there is so much coming at us from all angles. I mean, life isn't as simple as it used to be. The streams of data and information and overload, um, it's challenging for sort of an evolving human, right? To to focus and have clarity, and so I do think it's really important to just simplify and talk a little more around happiness in the workplace. Just and that's why I think it's the overarching distractions that are in the you know and some of them are quite challenging for many folks. So um, yeah, I think that's why we're talking about it more than ever.
Yeah, when I started Happy Work Studio back in 2020, and it was during the pandemic, so it was like life was pushing me to start this business because I already had a brand. It was called Stardust, and we were doing startup events, like something about happiness, but and like the future of work. But during the pandemic, something happened. I think something that we realized was it was already there. So it wasn't like, that we didn't know about it. But I think the priorities in our lives have shifted. And we just like, realized that life is so short and it can change in a minute. I mean, no one would have expected something to be like I remember and it's like the fourth anniversary. No, it's the fifth anniversary of the
Yeah,
pandemic.
yeah, just
Literally,
yeah,
literally, it started
yeah.
in March.
I
And
know.
when I am just like, thinking about that first announcement happening, I was like thinking when it was like starting in China, I said, there's no way that this is going to come to Turkey at that level. And when everything was just like, shut down, it was something that no one would have imagined. And I think that's how people started thinking more about it, about our lives. So
Yeah,
maybe it's because of that.
I think you're right. While there was a lot of tragedy and heartache during the pandemic for obvious reasons for a lot of families and people. On the other side, I do consider myself an optimist, and what that means is you try to find a silver lining in things that are happening. And it did require us to show up differently. I always
Mm.
joke a little bit, and I always say there used to be that question, the "How are you doing?" question, right? And all of a sudden, it started to become a real question. Like I actually genuinely cared about your response, and you actually gave me an honest response. It wasn't just a way to start a conversation. It was a, no, how are you doing? How are things? So this sense of caring, um, and and it's okay not to be okay mindset really started to come to the surface, and leaders rose. And not even, and when I mean leaders, I don't necessarily even mean from a hierarchy standpoint. Those who just understood that um, the role of a leader is to be there and to listen and consent, and the how can I, as I say, the how can I help you leader, not did you get it done yet leader. um, and these were teammates, these were colleagues, and everyone showed up, and everyone pitched in, and it was really I think a lot of beauty that happened. And my hope was that, how can we leverage and harness the best of humanity and the best of people, and how we showed up together when we had to, and keep that going. And so, how have we done?
Let's talk about that one.
Yeah,
What are some
let's talk about
mistakes?
that one.
Because like our topic is what's not working.
Yeah.
And so like yeah, what's working, and we have those examples and we will be talking about those. But what are those mistakes that you see? What is bothering you? And this is like, we used to see all those, greenwashing, and now it is more like engagement, happiness washing happening in the companies as well.
Yeah, I mean, so all right. A handful of things, and I know this is near and dear to a lot of the work that you do, but certainly, um, we had to learn how to work differently, and that meant being hybrid and remote, right? And so the world of remote work it always existed, but it sped up faster than we could have ever imagined. So one thing that I think we've done, not everybody, but we've done poorly to some degree, is figuring out um, what next. If we're going to bring people back into the office, why is the first question. Let's not do it just because we're supposed to or we feel like we should. Let's be intentional with that decision. And then under that why is, do we need to? And let's make sure everyone's in this together. Now, there are certain jobs, of course, where being front and center, and showing up and having to be somewhere is necessary. But I think these mandates on trying to get back to how things are normal, how things were kind of pre-pandemic, which is considered normal, has been a mistake a little bit. Number two, an obsession with KPIs. I am of course a believer. I'm an entrepreneur. I've built companies. I'm a believer in KPIs. I understand the importance of data more, and I'm a huge data geek. But I also understand more so the importance of momentum. And momentum is about people working together and creating movement to create something extraordinary. And I think we've continued to make errors and thinking a little bit too much in a binary way on change and movement. And so I think those are areas where those are things that are not working. And I think we need to continue to challenge HR, right, to think more holistically about the business, really understand the long play and the purpose of the business. I think the business has to look at KPIs and long-term plans in a little more of a fluid way, and I think we're getting back to this very binary way of thinking. So those are some things that aren't working right off the top of my mind.
Yeah, and so when I am looking at companies, I usually like when I see posts on LinkedIn, it's usually these like we had the International Women's Day. Everyone was posting about it, like, sending their women employees the gifts or like, some perks, giving extra perks. But what happens on March 9th? I keep asking that question because, like, it's easy to just have those perks or like the gifts, but like, what is the sustainable strategy that you have behind it? And what are the actions? Because usually we talk a lot, but we rarely take those actions. And it's like, walking the talk. And so when I see a company really taking action and doing something that's really like that shows that they care, is more important than having all those like, the posts and the policies, the guides, the handbooks.
Mm.
It's usually what happens. They just, try to make the employees happy at happy hours or like, company retreats, and which works well, really, like getting people together and having conversations outside of work. It really helps, but it doesn't help alone. So it has to be supported by those actions that you take for real. And that's I think the mistake. So if you just like, think that doing those retreats is going to do the magic,
Yeah.
that's a huge mistake.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's right. I mean, we've all been guilty, I suppose, and uh, those of us who have a or have lucky enough to have a little bit of a voice and can uh, and speak to masses, sometimes just saying niceties and fluffy things that might inspire someone for a day or a few hours, but ultimately it is about the hard work and it's about change and momentum, and that means becoming uncomfortable, and that's ultimately it's doing something consistently that you haven't been comfortable doing before. And so again, it isn't just doing it once because it's a certain day we're going to celebrate. It's doing it every day. It's doing it in the flow of everything that you do. And I think that's behavior change at its best. It's the smallest little things repeated consistently. And what's amazing is once you start to do that, you start to feel different and you start to see different reactions. And once you start to see different reactions, that reinforcement your behavior change uh, is reinforced by, oh, if I do this, I'm going to get a different reaction over here, and it feels good and it's better, and that's how movement and change happens. But it does require you to go to an uncomfortable place, and the only way we can go to an uncomfortable place is to have a support system, and a safe place in the workplace that allows us to go there and allows us to make some mistakes and allows us to fall from time to time. It's the only way we're going to continue to move forward. And I think organizations, and again, as far as what hasn't been where we have opportunity, we have to think with that lens and with that mindset. And it takes everybody, right? It takes everybody. Um,
And this is really something important that people need to. By the way, I'm keeping an eye on our audience on LinkedIn too. And if you have any questions, you can send it in the comments because I'm also keeping track of all the questions and comments. So for those of you who are listening, you can also ask us questions or like if you want to share any experience. It's really important that you mention that this is something that's not comfortable. Because change, even though you know that this is going to be a better thing for you, the way it is, the comfort zone is something that keeps you comfortable. So any change, whether it be for worse or better, is going to make you uncomfortable. And as you said, having that support system and just like, providing the psychological safety in the company should be the fundamentals of the project. If you are going to do it intentionally as a project or as an initiative for a behavior change, it has to be one, as you said, consistent, because like it doesn't change overnight. And sometimes companies wait for that magic sting, magic wand to just like touch the
Yeah.
heads of the employees and just boom, everything
Yes.
changes the next day. Doesn't happen like that.
You're a better employee and you're happier and you're
You're
happier.
happier.
Everybody's
You're a
happy
happy
today.
organization.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work like that. Yeah, there. I mean, there is a.
And then they complain. Then sometimes they complain. We're doing all these nice events and trying to make them happy, and no one's happy because they think that this is like something like an equation. Input and output doesn't work like that.
Well, and I think it's also, defining when we say happy, and maybe for the audience too listening, is really defining what do we mean by happy. And in my years of being in this space, and I mean, happy is a there's complexities in the word being happy. So I recognize that it isn't um, you don't arrive at happiness and now you're there, right? Happiness is something that's flowing with you every day. Um, and so, but I think the core of happiness is being able to be yourself, right? Being able to feel like you're making a difference, feel valued, of course, feel safe. Um, have great support around you, being working on something that you're proud of, laughing at work, working hard on something, and sometimes even getting exhausted, but then feeling um, so proud and celebrating that accomplishment. I mean, these are all ingredients, like you're made like happiness soup. I mean, these are ingredients that you would drop into it, and it's constantly evolving. And there are days and there are things in our personal lives or just kind of macro societal realities that are happening that can certainly put a damper on happiness. And so it's recognizing and giving each other enough grace and understanding and time and space when they need it. And I think if you do all of that consistently, and you're never going to be perfect, we're never all going to be happy all the time. Um, but if we strive towards something greater, and show up for each other, and care a little bit more, listen a little bit more, and organizations need to be also clear about their objectives, where they're going, what they stand for, what they believe in, because that allows greater connection in the workplace and having stronger connection and trust with the people who you surround yourselves with, and trust in the organization. All of that helps drive happiness too. So I think that's a real important part of it. And like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen with a gift card. It doesn't happen with a party. Not to say those are bad things; those are great. Oh, keep doing that, of course. But that's not all. Yeah, there's so much more, right? That we have to be doing.
Exactly. By the way, we have one comment from the audience. Torin just said, change, comfort, momentum, consistency, all descriptive of the progress formula. As you said, I love the analogy of the soup. You just have to have all the ingredients to make this delicious soup.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, and I agree that this takes effort, this takes time, but what are those, quick wins that the company, so if, because we now have our audience and we will have other people watching us later, and so what can we give them? Like, what in your experience, what would be the quick wins?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate the comments, and Torin, can't wait to see you next week. And speaking of Transform, Torin is going to be the MC next week at Transform, and he is just a
Amazing.
beautiful human being. I'll just throw that out there. And
See you next week then, Torin.
yes. And I love change, comfort, momentum. I always say change is momentum, not arrival. Right. It is all about momentum, and it's all about being uncomfortably comfortable. So as far as to the question around what can organizations do, I mean the first thing is there has to be a sense of clarity, and that's so being able to communicate um, where you stand, what you believe in, directionally from a business, people practices. Um, it's kind of like parenting, right? If parents are doing the wrong thing, children will think it's okay. So I think there's a sense of like practice what you preach, and organizations really need to do that. That's number one. If that's not happening, I talk about sharp edges. If you don't fix the sharp edges, we can't really get very far because you're going to keep poking yourself. You're going to keep getting scratched. So you have to look at what are some of the biggest sharp edges we have. Small things, and I say use the word small here because it should just be fixed. Things like pay equity, fix it, fix it. Like I'm that conversation. If
Because
I'm,
sometimes it's that simple.
I mean,
Usually, like companies are looking for these big changes or like, big moves. No, it's as simple as that.
yes,
By
equal
the
pay.
way,
Anybody
just
doing
sorry
whatever
for
job they are.
for
Yeah,
interrupting, but we have one more comment, actually a question from the audience. So as we
yeah,
are having this
yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
I'd
I
like
love it.
to just, tap onto that too. There's
Yeah,
no universal formula to make
I love
everyone
it.
happy. The important thing is to find what makes individuals happy personally. It is necessary to receive training on how to find this personally. How do you think company managers can solve this? So this was related to our conversation, so I
Yeah.
wanted to just point this out.
But that's a great question because um, I think that you have to, again, it's giving everyone space to be themselves, um, and absolutely, individual. I'm sorry, I'm putting my glasses on so I can read the question a little bit more, but um, it isn't necessarily. So there's accountability at the individual level to say, here's what I need, right? This is what makes me happy. And then there's a responsibility of the organization and leadership to help that person achieve that. It is so. I think it's creating space for employees to thrive, but mixing in and making sure that you're giving them the appropriate connections in the workplace, making sure there's clarity on what they're working on, making sure there's clear direction on where we're going, where they're going. Um, and as far as the training piece of the question, yeah, I mean, I think that there is some great. I think there's opportunity just to. It's almost how do we listen more effectively? The best leaders speak second, right? They listen first. And so when you're working with a team and or a group, um, give space to people to talk first, and this is what I think, this is what I believe, and then that will actually create a sense of happiness and joy that's based on feeling like they're a part of problem solving and
Yeah.
solution solving.
And I think providing that space is really critical.
Yeah.
And I always give this analogy of a flower. I once posted about this on LinkedIn. I had a flower in the balcony, the same balcony and the same flower, but I changed. So it was like really not blossoming. It was just, sitting on the corner. And then I just decided to change the place of the flower and place it in the same balcony to the other corner. It flourished, it blossomed. I mean, it was like
Sure.
providing the space, making them just be in their space, in their zone, so that they are thriving. And so Karen is also commenting, speak second is cool. I really loved it. So a good leader, if you want to be a good leader, have your employees happy and engaged, speak second. So
Nobody wants to walk
that's
into a room and have a leader or a team lead say, "So here's exactly what we're going to do." Um, I mean, of course, there's moments, and I'm not saying we should. There needs decision making that needs to happen, but the best ideas come from sometimes the quietest voices, people who don't get an opportunity to speak up. And where you're just, I mean, it baffles me sometimes that leaders don't take the time to listen, and I do really think that's a key ingredient to happiness. And I love your analog and your analogy about the flower. And just to add on to that, you're right. So a different corner of the room, all of a sudden it blossoms. But it also takes time for anything to blossom, right? So if you sat there and you stared at the flower, oh, I'm gonna watch it blossom. You're not really gonna see it change. If you step away for a couple of days, you give it everything that it needs. You give it the light. You give it, the right corner, the right angle, the food, the water, whatever, everything that it might need, and you come back in a couple of days. All of a sudden, that we talked about the magic wand. That is the magic wand, and all of a sudden, it's blossomed, and you're not going to see it, in real time, unless you're really, really, really patient and don't need to sleep. But it does happen, and so I think it's patience. That's an important part of this as well. If you create that space, and you create that support system, and you create that, and you listen, and all everything that we've been talking about, and you give it a little bit of time, and you have a little bit of patience,
That's
change
that's
can happen.
that's like the video I'm using. So we have happiness coach program where we certify people to be happiness coaches. We also have the happiness workplace happiness specialist program, and I use this video where shows the blossoming of different flowers and how they blossom in a different way at a different pace.
Yeah.
So sometimes even time, it changes from people to people. So like, it might for you, a change might happen overnight. For someone else, the same thing might happen in 2 months. And doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It just happens at the right time.
Yeah. Another comment, I always say that if you want to be happy,
Happy, make happy to one first. So,
yeah,
okay, so
make
making
people
someone happy
making
first. Yeah.
someone up. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, happiness breeds happiness for sure. And I think, um, I always like to say, as a leader, of course, I want to inspire those around me. But what's even more magical is when I'm inspired by people around me. Like, to me, that's the magic. Um,
But if you provide that space, that opportunity,
Yes, and
that's
that's
the
and
key.
that's and that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And so it isn't necessarily the job. I mean, like that's a luxury and a beautiful thing when that can happen. And the only way that can happen is to make sure that your people have a voice, and you speak second, and with that, it's amazing how that will inspire you, and that also creates happiness, and that's a two-way street with happiness. And so, I mean, so per the earlier question, which I think prompted a lot of this, these are small things that organizations can start to do tomorrow, right? Any leader watching this, in your next team meeting, couple of things. First of all, walk in, ask everyone how they're doing, and not just a general, but let's chat. Let's get
Genuinely,
ask
just
how are you?
care about them.
There's a lot going on right now. I mean, and look, there might be big things that and there are big things that people disagree on, but man, we have to learn how to get past some of those things and realize we actually have more in common than we think, and that we all, for the most part, want the same thing. And so I want to see more of that, and I think organizations have a responsibility to do that. And it does start at the team level in many cases, and it does start, like, to my parenting and analog. Leaders need to be doing the right thing, and not just saying the right thing, but doing the right thing. It's their actions that matter. Ultimately, actions drive change, not just grand, big statements, right? It's actions that drive change.
So our time is up. I'm sad to say
Oh,
this, but the good thing is we have another session next week on Wednesday morning. So stay tuned because we will be uh, presenting live from Transform Conference. We will be your eyes and ears from the conference, just talking about what's trending, what's being talked about, our networking, and all that. We will be bringing that perspective to you. So, and we will be doing these sessions, hopefully, for more of them. Before we go, I would like to ask you one bold prediction about 2025.
Um, just in general, a bold prediction. Oh, I think we've said this before. I've said this before. 2025 is a year in so many ways about disruption. Um, so my bold prediction is there's going to be is that it's more of an ask. Everyone needs to brace in a little bit, but continue to do the right thing. Continue to see the long play and the North Star, and to continue to take care of those around you, because we're going to be hit left and right, back and front, and it's just there's a lot going on. There's a lot of uncertainty in a global context as well. So that's my prediction is it's going to be hard. And I'm an optimist, but I do believe beauty can come out of the most challenging of times. So I, I, I,
100%.
I will remain optimistic through all this because I have to. I have
Yeah,
to.
that's what I keep saying. I'm an optimist, and like, I never stop being an optimist because of everything was happening around us. My bold prediction is that the leaders are going to be assessed based on the happiness levels and engagement levels of their employees in the very short run. And so we will see the well-being of the employees being even more important. Which country? There's one country that they passed a law that the responsibility of the well-being is not the employees anymore, is the companies. I'm trying to remember the country, but we will be seeing more well-being, more happiness, more engagement topic being prioritized in the companies. So that's my bold statement for 2025.
I mean that what you just said opens up a whole conversation on on generational gaps and like expectations of new workers in the workforce and individual happiness. I mean, we'll have a lot of these conversations because I completely agree with you on that prediction.
And we have one last comment reminded me of Time to Think. Great book on listening to empower. Thank you both, Mina and Dan. Great inspiration will focus on the commonalities. Thank you. So thank you everyone for
Thanks, everyone.
watching us, and
Appreciate it.
please stay tuned for next week. We are so much looking forward to having that conversation. Thanks, Dan. It was great again having this conversation with you, and I'm so much looking forward to our next ones.
Me as well.
Enjoy,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Bye.
great day or evening. Bye bye.